Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to implement our first end-to-end test. We're going to maintain basically the same structure as we have done under Jetpack Compose and the same use cases, pretty much. Now, the first use case or the first test which you have to implement is for the main section of our application. Let's create in the folder end-to-end test a new file. Let's call it main end-to-end test. That should inherit from end-to-end test. The first test case that we have to do here is for the splash screen. We need to make sure that the splash screen should be invisible when done loading. This is going to lead us to implement the first robot, which is the splash screen robot. Under robots, create a new class. Let's call it splash screen robot. That should inherit from the robot class. The function that we're going to define here is to make sure that the splash screen is invisible after a certain timeout. By calling wait and assert, image does not exist. If you do remember, under the splash screen, we have set the image as the main brand of our application. For the identifier, splash screen image key. For the timeout, under the constants, I'm going to create here a default timeout for testing. Let's call it end-to-end timeout. Let's wrap this with time interval and import foundation. We are very patient. We're going to do 15 seconds. So afterward, we have to make sure that we have something under the layout. Let's come back first of all to the splash screen. We have set the splash screen image key to the full logo image, and under layout, more specifically in the header section, let's assert, for example, that this logo is being displayed. Under the header, we have the logo that has the accessibility identifier application name. We're going to use this and we're going to do assert has image with the identifier is local keys and application name. In other words, we have the layout visible under our screen. Let's come back to the main end-to-end test. We have to create the instance of splash screen robot of type splash screen robot. And we have to override the function on setup because we need to provide the instance and to initialize the instance of the splash screen robot. Splash screen robot, and we have to provide as an argument in the constructor the application from application under end-to-end test. And we have to use this symbol to force the non-null value. Splash screen robot and assert has passed splash screen scene. That's pretty much it for this test. Before moving forward, we need to make sure that we have the correct IP address set to the constant file. More specifically, under the host, it should have the correct IP address or the private IP address. And you can obtain the private IP address by running ef configuration and copy the private IP address and paste it here. And make sure this IP address should be the same as the one that you have done under the environment in Laravel. Now, finger crossed, let's run the test. No errors so far. And the test passed. So far we are doing things correctly. For the next test, we need to make sure that we have the list of products. Come back to end-to-end test, main end-to-end test. As usual, we're going to use the splash screen robot and assert has passed splash screen. And we need to create another robot for the product related assertions. Let's try to infer all the needed functions that we have to implement in advance in order to save some time. For the first function, assert has list of products. We're going to do the same thing that we have done under Jetpack Compose by doing mock data and data from pagination response. I'm going to map the result to product preview. And for each product, I'm going to make the assertion. Let's implement this function that we're going to call scroll and assert has correct data. It has to be a private function. We have to make sure that we have the correct thumbnail by doing if lit thumbnail from the product preview and thumbnail. And we have to scroll and assert exists. The scrollable container, which is UI constant, scrollable container. And let's try to make sure that we have done this under the layout. We have done this under the layout, which is scrollable container. For the target identifier, which is the thumbnail. Why? Because we have identified each image with the URL. And for the accessibility trait, it is none. We need to make sure that it has the correct product title, and we have to make sure that it has the correct price by doing assert has text And for the text from local keys and price value and localized, this is why I don't want hardcode things, because if we have down here a typo or something, we're going to mess up the whole test. So it is a good idea actually to not hardcode stuff. For the bundle here, which is core UI, and for the arguments, all right, let's come back to the product card. We have just to copy this basically and paste it here. And we need to make sure that this products card has the learn more button by doing assert has button, and let's provide the identifier learn more button. For the content description of learn more button, I'm just going to copy the whole thing and use it under the end-to-end test. That's pretty much it for the scroll and assert has correct data. And we have to do here scroll and assert has correct data and pass as an argument products preview. And that's all. Now we have basically two options, either to run the test or to continue implementing all the functionalities of the products robot. I'm going to opt in the latter. We can infer from the previous application is we need to make sure that we can navigate to product detail when the user is going to click on a certain product and navigate to the product detail screen. Let's arrange first of all the product. Now we're just gonna make sure that we have the correct thumbnail and scroll to this particular section of our screen. Let's take just for example the first image, and we have to scroll and assert exists. Next we're going to look for the learn more button by using on UI element. For the identifier, which is the same identifier that we have done here, I'm gonna copy this. And the accessibility trait is button. After finding this particular button, we have to click on it. And we need to make sure that the page is ready. In other words, the loading indicator is invisible. I'm gonna add it as a reusable function by calling on progress indicator. We have to provide here the identifier, and we have to wait for non-existence. And underneath, we're going to assert is page ready. After navigating to the product detail, we need to make sure that we have the correct detail. Let's add another function. Let's call it assert has correct detail. As an argument, we need the product of type product as an optional parameter by providing the default value sunglasses. Now we need to make sure that the product detail screen has the correct media or the correct images. Let's loop over this particular array. We need the index of the image and the data, which is the image, in product and media, and enumerate it because we need to access the index. First of all, we have to wait for the current image to exist. For the identifier, which is the image and original URL, the accessibility trait is none, and we have to wait for its existence. Afterward, you have to make sure that this value is true. After this assertion, we have to make sure that we have the correct product title, and we need to make sure that it has the correct description. We need to scroll to a certain area of the screen basically to make only one scroll to make the other elements visible. And because we are going to need this particular function on scrollable in different places under our end-to-end test, let's make it reusable. Go ahead under robot and let's define this under the progress indicator. For example, here we have to provide the identifier. It has to return a UI element. Then let's get the scrollable by doing app and scroll views, and let's wait for its existence. I'm gonna add here timeout. After the assertion, we have to return the element scrollable. Let's use it under the test by doing on scrollable. Let's provide here the identifier, which is UI constant scrollable container. Keep in mind, we have only one scrollable container, and we have to perform sweep up. Basically, it's going to scroll down. After performing one scroll, we have to assert that we have the correct price. We have the first section of the text containing the $sign and a space after this, and another string that contains the price value. Let's come back to the product detail screen. After this assertion, we need to make sure that we have the correct description. Let's assert first of all that we have the title or the label description, and let's assert that we have the correct content of the description. Next, we need to make sure that we have the correct quantity, the stock and the label in stock. For the first section containing the quantity as a string and the other section of the string contains the label in stock or out of stock. We have to check if the product is in stock. We're going to show here the label in stock. Otherwise, we have to show the label out of stock. Underneath, we're going to make another assertion that we have the correct product category. And the last assertion, we need to make sure that we have the button, toggle button. I'm talking about this particular button, toggle wishlist button. And this button has a certain content description. If in wishlist, it should contain this remove from wishlist. If it's not in wishlist, it's going to contain this label add or this content description add to wishlist accessibility identifier. Therefore, we have to do here assert has image, local keys add to wishlist accessibility identifier. And that's all for the function assert has correct detail. If you do remember, we need to test and make some assertions for the suggested products, more specifically under the autocomplete that we have implemented earlier. I'm gonna call this function assert can show product suggestions. Let's arrange the query and the correct suggestions by calling mock data and suggested products. Next, we have to insert some text into the text field. Let's provide here the identifier from local keys, search products, accessibility identifier. Next, we have to insert the text, which is the search query. We're going to loop over the suggestions that we have obtained from calling suggested products, correct suggested products. We're going to scroll and assert exists. The scrollable identifier, which is search input list test tag for the target identifier, which is the suggested product, and for the argument, which is product ID and the description. And for the accessibility trait, it's none. Let's come back to the search input, the search suggestion item. We have to use basically this particular section, which is local keys, suggested products, and passing the ID. That's going to identify each search suggestion item individually. Let's come back to the product robot. We have to make sure that we have the correct product title. Let's store this view product title by calling on UI elements the identifier, which is product and title, and is a static text. To make it more readable, product title view. All right. We need to assert that this particular product title view exists under our tree. With the same manner, we have to get the product category, for example, to check if we have the correct category. With the same manner, we have to make sure that this element exists, and we need to make sure that we have the correct image. Under the search suggestion, we have the image identified as follow. Here it has to be product and title. Let's wait for 5 seconds. And I think that's pretty much it for the function assert can show product suggestions. Now, after finding the suggested products, we need to make sure that we can navigate from this list of suggested products to the detail, which is the product detail screen. Let's call this function assert can navigate to product detail from suggested products. As usual, we're going to arrange the search query and arrange the correct product to be shown under the product detail. Next, we have to insert some text to the text field, search input, and assert exist. Basically, we need to scroll to the product sunglasses under the suggestion, click on this product, and wait for the page to be ready. We need to scroll down. Next, let's store this particular UI element, which is the suggested product, sunglasses, by using onElement and providing the correct accessibility identifier. Afterward, we have to click on this particular product. Let's close the keyboard by doing on keyboard return, and we have to assert that the page is ready, and we have to assert that has the correct detail, and we have to pass as an argument the product that we have arranged earlier. Now, if the user clicks on the magnify icon, it should trigger the search event. Let's arrange the correct suggested products by calling mock data and suggested products. Let's loop over the correct suggested products, and as usual, we have to scroll and assert has correct data. Now, all we have to do is make another assertion to make sure that we can navigate to search results screen, and we have to provide the search query. After navigating to search results screen, first of all, we have to insert to the search input the search query from the parameter. Afterward, we have to close the keyboard by doing on keyboard return. And let's wait for the loading indicator under the search input to be invisible. Let's store this view under search loading indicator. Next, we have to wait for the non-existence of the search loading indicator. We have to look for the button, magnify icon button. After finding this button, we're going to click on it. And we have to assert that the page is ready. And that's pretty much it for the test. Now, if the user provided some non-existing product title that can result in a warning message to be shown, in this particular case, we need to add some assertion to make sure that we have the warning message shown in the screen. I'm going to call this function assert has warning message. First of all, we have to assert can navigate to the search results screen. Let's provide here the search query. After this, we're going to wait for the existence of the warning message by doing wait and assert text exists. For the identifier, which is local keys, empty product list, let's wait for 5 seconds. All right, let's come back to the search results screen to see that in action. The warning message is identifiable by the text, empty product list, and localized. And I think that's pretty much it for the product robot. Let's focus on the scenarios. Under the test home screen should have the list of products. We need to make sure that the splash screen is invisible. Afterward, we have to use here the product robot. Let's initialize the product robot. And we have to use the product robot. And we need to assert has list of products. Run the test. And we have an error. We have the error under the scroll and assert. No scrollable element found with identifier scrollable container. Let's first of all mark this with unused. Let's come back to the layout under the navigation. We need to wrap this with vstack first. And we have to move this basically under the scroll view. We have done a small error here. And for the on change, it should be on the navigation destination. Let's go ahead and run the test. It's scrolling. I think that the scroll operation should be optimized, but we can do it later on. It's gonna take some time, to be honest. And the test passed. We are now sure that we have the correct product under the list. Next test case, we need to make sure that we can navigate to the product detail screen. As usual, let's wait for the splash screen to be invisible. And let's call product assert can navigate to product from list. Let's run the test. And the test failed. For some reason, let's investigate. It's under the page is ready. Enable to find progress indicator with identifier loading indicator. Let's see the product detail screen. We haven't added the accessibility identifier. Let's add here accessibility identifier. Let's run the test. Instead of asserting the progress indicator is invisible, let's try to wait for the aperture of the title of the product. Let's do this approach. Wait and assert text exists. The identifier, here's going to be product title. And for the interval, let's do UI constant and end-to-end test. All right, let's run the test. And the test passed. It serves purpose. Let's see in other tests if this function is working correctly. We're going to do that later on. Now let's create another end-to-end test for the product detail. For the first test, and it has only one test, the product detail screen should have correct product detail. Let's wait for this splash screen, and let's make sure that we can navigate to product detail from list. And we need to make sure that we have the correct detail. Let's run the test. And the test passed. As you can see, it can navigate or it can switch to the other image under the carousel, and it checks again that has the correct detail, which is good. Let's add another end-to-end test for the product search screen. I think instead of a product search screen, it has to be just for search in general. For the first test, we need to make sure by typing in search bar or search input should show the product suggestions. As usual, we need to wait for the splash screen to be invisible. And we have to call the assertion assert can show product suggestions. Let's run the test. Insert in S, we have the suggestions, and I think that we have an error. The failure here, no scrollable elements found with identifier search input list test tag. In order to solve this problem, let's come back to the product robot and try to add a reusable function to delay the operation of the assertion. I'm gonna call it delay or wait for. We will use run loop current and run until date at time interval, and let's hoist this add in time interval. I'm gonna copy this and paste it here under the product robot. Before looping over the data, we have to do here wait for, and let's provide here the time interval. Let's do 1 second, for example. Now the scrollable container should appear or should exist under the tree. Let's check if we have solved this problem of non-existence of the scrollable container. I think that we have solved the problem. Right now the container exists under the tree, but to be honest, I'm not quite happy with the implementation of scroll and assert exists. I'm going to start doing it from scratch, to be honest. I can see here checking all the items or the suggested items under the console. It's gonna take a while, basically, because the implementation, as I said before, it's not optimal. And to test pass, basically, we have the correct suggestions. I'm not too happy with this implementation. Anyway, we have two options here, basically. The first one, which is not ideal, after waiting for 1 second, if your objective is to see the robot scrolling within the scrollable container and assert, we have a hard coding solution, if you will. How to do so? I'm gonna just walk you through the algorithm, if you will. Just an overview of the algorithm. We have the scrollable container with the height of 420 or 400 pixels, all right? And we can have a rough estimation of the amount of the number of scrolls that we have to do in this particular container. Just a simple math here, we have 420, and for each element, it could take, for example, each suggestion could take between 40 and 60. Then we can estimate here that the number of scrolls, we have just to divide this amount by this amount. Next, you have just to define the velocity of the scroll. On scrollable, add here the modifier and scroll and sweep with the velocity in pixels. If the item has 40 pixels as height, you should add here 40. And it's gonna be a little bit good and a little bit satisfying under the test, but you have to hard code values and it's not gonna work in every case. I'm going to proceed with another implementation under the robot class. We need to specify where to scroll. Basically the left corner, the top corner, bottom corner, and the right corner of the element. We're going to use basically vector for that purpose. And for the left point that should be defined, we will take 5% from the left and it should be centered vertically. For the right point, it's gonna be slightly in the right edge of the element. In other words, 95% from the left. And it should be vertically centered. For the top point of this particular element, slightly below the top edge of the element, horizontally centered, and 5% from the top. For the bottom point, slightly above the bottom edge of the element, horizontally centered, and 95% from the top of the frame. Now we have to provide the direction mapping. For each case, it will return a tuple of begin and end position normalized coordinates that define the SWIP gesture start and end points. For example, for the up means we're going to start from the near bottom, in other words 95%, to near top, which is 5% of the element position. In case we are sweeping up, in this case we have to return this tuple for the begin position, bottom point, and for the end it is top point. In case of scrolling up, we're going to sweep downwards. For the tuple, we're going to start near the top and we have to end near the bottom. In case of left, we will start near right edge, and for the end, we will end near left edge. In case of right, we're going to start near left edge and we're going to end near right edge. And we're going to use this vector tuple in order to scroll approximately within the scrollable container. I will add another extension function on the element just to make it easier for us to use this function, which is scroll to a certain position or a certain element. I'm gonna call it scroll until visible or until exists. If you want to do it as visible, it's not gonna work, which is very unfortunate. Just an overview of this scroll until exists. It's with scrolls or sweeps inside a scrollable container until a target element exists, or the maximum number of sweeps. In other words, the sweep limit is reached. We need the sweep direction, the target element, the existence of the element, or we have reached the maximum sweep limit. Let's define the sweep duration and the timeout between sweeps. Let's add here Boolean for the return type. First things first, we have to assert that this element exists, which is the current element where this function is going to be applied to. Let's pass here the error message. Next, we have to define the sweep start and end points based on the direction. This use normal coordinates with the elements frame. And with normalized offset, it's going to be direction and vector that we have implemented before and begin. And you have to specify the end with the same manner. And let's start the remaining sweeps under this variable. And we have to keep sweeping until the target appears or the limit is reached. And remaining is greater than 0. We have to perform the sweep gesture by doing start and press for the duration sweep duration, then drag to the end position, which are the coordinates of the elements. We have to give the UI some time to update before checking again by doing run loop, current and main, and run until date and add time interval. Let's add here the wait between sweeps, decrement by 1 the remaining attempts. Once we are outside the loop, we're going to return whether the target now exists in the UI or not. That's basically it. This function is no longer useful. I'm gonna delete it. Assert can navigate to products from list. On scrollable container, we're going to do here scroll until exists. For the sweep direction, it should be up. And for the target, which is the thumbnail, we can use the onUI element for the identifier, which is thumbnail. And for the accessibility trait, it's none. And first match. Just to enhance basically the use of this scroll until exists, we're going to add here an annotation, discardable result. We don't care actually about the result of this particular Boolean. Let's come back to the product robot and it should be gone. With the same manner, let's define the rest. Let's assign first the scrollable, and instead of this, we're going to scroll up and the target element, which is the product title. And for the sweep limit, let's do 10, sweep duration 0.3. I'm going to delete this. With the same manner, we're going to scroll to the category. We don't want this. We don't need this. And if you add basically scroll to this particular container or this particular element image, it's going to scroll beyond the container. I could not actually find a solution for this, so I do not recommend running this, which leads me to say, I don't know why they haven't done a sweep to elements function under the API of testing, like the one defined under Jetpack Compose, which kind of make our life easier. It's a mandatory function, so we can focus on the tests instead of reinventing the wheel and come up with workaround. Basically, this function that we have implemented right now is just a workaround. It's not perfect. And this is the caveat under this particular section. If you try to scroll to this particular element, it's going to scroll beyond the scrollable container. It's going to lead to an infinite loop, trying to find the bottom of the container. So you have to end it manually. So this is just a side note, but it works perfectly fine under undefined height of a scrollable container. With the same manner, we're going to do the rest. I have updated the code to match the new implementation. Now I think that we have to run the tests. For the record, I have changed the scroll and assert has correct data on scrollable. And we're going to use the scroll until exists up and the target element, which is the thumbnail. Accessibility trait, none. I updated another one, which is from the list while navigating from the search input suggestion items, the scrollable, and we're going to scroll down basically to the top of the list to click on this particular element. Then we can make the assertion to tap on this element to navigate to the product detail. Let's see if we have done this correctly. Let's come back to the first end-to-end test under the main end-to-end test, and let's run this test case. It does scroll to the exact element. As I said before, here it's working perfectly fine, but under the small container, for some reason, it overshoots the bottom of the container. And the test passed. It's not that slick and it's not that optimal. It takes a lot of time actually to finish, but it serves purpose. Let's run this test. Can navigate to product detail. The test passed. Let's check this one. The test passed. And let's check this particular one. It's not going to scroll, but it's going to assert that the element exists under the tree. The most important thing here is we have the elements under the tree. We have to test by clicking on the suggested product, should navigate to product detail. As usual, we're going to assert has passed splash screen, and we're going to assert can navigate to product detail from the suggestions. Let's run this test. I think that we have to wait for the existence of the container. Wait for 1 second. Underneath this insert, we have to insert first of all, then to make the assertion. We have a problem. Under this on keyboard return, we can see that the virtual keyboard is being dismissed. Therefore, I'm going to delete this and run the test. And the progress indicator is not visible. Instead of page is ready, we're gonna just do here assert has correct detail. You can add here wait for 1 second. and the test passed. Right now, we need to make sure that submitting search query should display matching products. Let's wait for the splash screen. I'm going to do here product robot and assert can navigate to search results screen by providing the search query. And we're going to make sure that has the matching products by doing product robot and assert has matching product by providing the search query as well. If you can't see the test after refreshing this list, just save the file. Let's run the test. All right, we have a problem. Page is ready. Once again, the progress indicator is not visible. Instead of asserting that page is ready, I'm gonna wait for 1 second. Let's run again the test. Now we're going to add one last test, which is submitting non-existent product title as a search query should show the warning message. As usual, going to wait for the splash screen and assert can navigate with some non-existent title. Going to arrange the search query and assert has warning message. Let's run the test. I forgot that we have made this assertion under the assert has warning message. I'm gonna delete this instead. It's gonna be very simple. Let's try to run the test. And the test failed. All right, so there is a problem actually with the navigation or with loading the data. I think that we're going to investigate the view model. Let's go to the product view model. We're going to basically do this. But for the list of products, we are using the same variable or the same state, which is product. I think, in my opinion, we have to add a dedicated list for this screen, which is search result screen. Under the states, I'm going to add here, instead of products, I'm gonna add here another list for the search results. Let's call it search results. It will have the products preview, all right? Under the constructor, the same here. In the copy function as well. Of course, after doing this, we have to run the integration tests to see if we haven't tampered or we haven't done anything wrong, as well as search results. And instead of this, what we have to do, instead of products, we have to do search results. I would like to add another event. If we keep it like this, we're gonna have another problem. Perhaps if we have some pagination under the search products, we're going to add the old list to the new list. We don't want this kind of behavior. Products event, gonna add another event, clear search results. It's gonna be triggered whenever the user clicks on the magnify icon. Let's implement this. Private function, search result, empty array. All right. Now let's come back to the screen. Product search results. I'm going to replace the products with search results. I'm gonna replace it with search results. Let's not forget about the layout. More specifically, under the header section on products events, clear search results. Then we can navigate. I hope it's gonna work. Now, before moving forward, we have to make sure that we haven't tampered with the integration test for the product integration test. I'm gonna switch back to the scheme product feature. For the search product, instead we have to do here search result. And for the assertion, search result for this test case, and search result and search result. Let's run all the specs. All tests succeeded. Switch back to the pocket good scheme. We were under this particular test. Let's run the test. I'm sorry guys, but we haven't basically updated this. Search products, search results. Okay, and again, let's try to run the integration test first. Okay, it passed. Now let's switch back to the pocket goods scheme and let's run the test. The position of this particular warning message is badly positioned. Let's try to change the layout a little bit, but the test passed. I will switch back to the product feature, and instead of loading the data, comment this, and let's see the preview. All right, instead of assigning this, we're going to assign an empty array. We're going to fix this once we are done implementing all the integration tests. Let's try to run all tests at once. Product search end-to-end test. We are under, clicking on suggested products, should navigate to product detail. It's passed. Now submitting search query should display matching products. It passed. Now submitting some non-existing product title should give us the warning message. And typing in search bar should show products or the suggested products. I don't know if you have noticed, but under the search results screen, I have seen a brief aperture of the warning message. I think that I'm going to stop the video here. For the next video, I'm going to continue the rest. I hope you have learned something new. See you in the next one, and happy coding.